So if the difficult part of coming up with a budget for software projects, IT projects, is estimation, because we have to basically take our work breakdown structure and tell you how much time each task is going to take, then we have to have a good feel for approaches to estimation. Now, to be fair, a lot of being good at estimation is experience, and I can't teach you experience. You can only define and grow experience as it goes, but what I can give you is some insights of how to gain that experience and how to leverage that experience as you come up with it, and more importantly, how to ask other people how their experiences are to be able to bring things forward. So estimation is all about how much time does it take, how much resources does it take to fill this thing, how many hours does it take, and really, if you're building a dam and you're loading it with concrete, you can do some calculations based off of volume and how much concrete compresses as it dries, or whatever it's going to be, where those things come up with. But for software projects, it's people and how long people take to do stuff. And there's a lot of questions on that because it's not simple to know exactly what needs to be done and how long it's going to take, and thus get to how much it's going to cost. Because I've heard people say otherwise, but I'm not a believer that the same task takes the same amount of time with different people. I think it's very easy to say somebody who's 6'7" is going to be able to put stuff on the top shelf faster than somebody who's 4'5". They can just reach up and do it, as opposed to somebody who has to climb a ladder each time. There's sometimes physical attributes, sometimes there's mental attributes, sometimes there's experience that comes into play. Sometimes people are just more attuned to certain tasks. I'm a very, very fast coder. I can solve problems very quickly that way. I am less adept at very procedural things like operating system scripting and moving things around and setting things up and installing stuff. And there's stuff that, there's other people who are definitely better than I am at it. And part of it is figuring out who the right person for the task is, or if a person must do a task, what their capability, what their productivity is going to be for that task. So before you get to that, though, we definitely need to break down what the tasks are. We need to take the big things and make them smaller things, because that's the hardest part if you've never done estimation before, is how do I take this big task that I've never really done before, or at least not done this type of task before, and tell you how long it's going to take. Often it's a gut feel, missing a lot of details inside of there. You look at it and say, I don't know, a month? And maybe you're close, maybe you're not. Until you get started, you might not realize how much you didn't know about that. So the best thing you can do, instead of taking a rough guess, is to break it down into something you absolutely can quantify. You can say, hey, how long is it going to take you to do this? And so you got to break down the big tasks into smaller tasks, and you keep breaking those big down tasks into smaller tasks until you feel confident and you get to that. And certainly, as I said, you got to be able to get some feedback of, did I break this down? Did I catch everything? Am I missing anything in the way I've thought about this? So again, if I'm asking you to code something and I say, hey, go build a web page, and you're like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. I can go to NetBeans and I can set up the database and I can build some beans and I can generate it and I'm good to go because I've got create, read, update, and delete. So I should be good to go. And then you talk to somebody who's experienced, like, well, yeah, that can get you started, but we also need to modify the flow so we account for security. Not everybody can do that, and that doesn't do it by default. You also have to go through and change the validation rules because we have to account for this type of data and these other few things that maybe you've never done before, maybe you just didn't think about. It's not necessarily saying that you're not there yet. It just might be that you have never seen that yet. That's the thing about software projects. You are almost always doing something you've never done before. The whole point of writing software is to automate something so nobody ever has to do it again, or at least exactly that task. You're doing something slightly different every single time you look at it. So let's give an example, and I want to do an entirely analogous example inside of here. It's not going to be software IT at all. We'll get to those examples in demo stuff, but to show you what I mean by break it down. So here's an example. So let's say you have this block of grass. How long would it take you to mow this block of grass? Now, this is something you might want to, as we go through it, pause this video and reflect. Stop and think about how you would break this down, because I'm going to give you some pieces of data, but the thing is, I'm going to give you pieces of data. You might not know what to ask about this piece of data. And again, this isn't a software project, but it's the type of thing you should be thinking about, and how do you break it down. So again, you got your mower up there, you're sitting up there in the top left corner here, here you are right here, you're getting ready to go. So what do you want to know? Well, the first piece of information I can tell you is that the yard here is 30 feet by 20 feet. Not a very big yard here. This is a small yard here. It's going to make our math a little bit easier as we go through there. So, okay, it's like, that's a good piece of information. Now, again, if you think you can solve the problem there, then go ahead and take a guess at it. You might know some information that other people don't know, but I'm going to say you probably don't have enough information yet. So pause if you want to. But the next piece of information is it takes you 10 seconds with the lawnmower to walk 30 feet. And then your lawnmower covers 18 inches at a time, and you are a careful mower, so you're going to overlap each row by 6 inches. So there's the key piece of information. So again, it'll take you 10 seconds to go across. So now you can start to really quantify this. Like, so I've got all the numbers I need to spread this out. So again, if I'm going to go build 6 classes, I'm building a job application. It takes 6 classes. I'm building a C# application. I'm building 6 classes, and each class takes me about an hour to build. Then it should be about a day. I'll give myself some fluff inside of there. So I'm going to take a lunch and stuff like that. So it'll take 1 day to be able to go through and build this class, right? That's the type of thing that we often do. If we know how many classes we need to build, we go off and we give how long it takes each one. We give an estimate. So in this case, the answer is each pass. We do 1 foot of mowing. So the first one we do 18 inches, but each one after that we overlap by 6 inches. So it gives another foot, and so on and so forth. So we do 20 passes, and then at 10 seconds each pass, there's 200 seconds. So our answer is about 3 minutes and 20 seconds when we're all said and done. There you go. That takes me 3 minutes and 20 seconds to mow the yard, right? It seems quick though, right? Just as a gut feel. Is it ever taking you less than 5 minutes to mow the yard? It seems like a bit rough, because I think maybe we've forgotten some stuff in our estimation. Because there's a big but here. Did we plan on starting the mower? Maybe you have an electric motor that immediately gets out, but normally you have to go out to the shed or to the garage or the basement and pull the thing out, and I have to start it up. That might take a couple minutes to do all that work. And then what about cleaning up beforehand? What if there's some plastic bags that blew into the yard, or some litter that people have put out there? Do I just jump on and start mowing? There could be some little pre-cleaning I want to do. And then what about turning around? It takes me 10 seconds to walk, but it's got to add a little bit of time to turn around, right? 2 seconds, 5 seconds each pass. So that's, if I'd say 2 seconds each time, that adds another 40 seconds to my time. Now I'm up to 4 minutes immediately. And then what about cleaning up after? Do I just finish mowing and walk away? Am I going to sweep the yard? Sweep the sidewalk a little bit, get the grass off of it? So the same thing is true in our software development project. We have to set up our interactive development environment. We have to make sure our design is ready to go, that we've set up our source code repository, that we're able to check stuff in. We have to, as we go through each class and build it, we probably want to test it. A little bit of turnaround there, and then cleaning up afterwards. Again, the testing, the release, the putting everything together, to checking it all in. All those things have a certain amount of weight to it. And they might be 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, but when I'm doing it times 100, well, that can add days to my total, my days to my estimate. And again, I tend to think of, hey, I work 24 hours a day. Well, no, you don't. You only work maybe, if you're lucky, 8 hours a day, and that's probably if you're working overtime. You're probably going to get 5 or 6 productive hours again between all your meetings and lunch and time cards and performance reviews and training and everything else like that. So we need to be careful when we do our estimation. Now, good estimation means I have to know quite a bit about the domain. How do I solve the problem? How have I broken it down? Can I break it down into pieces? Again, classes, methods, database tables, screens that I'm going to go build. I have to have a good idea for how many of those and what type of them I'm going to build. And sometimes I don't necessarily always get it down to that level of detail. Sometimes I get a gut feel for stuff. It's okay. your gut's going to get better over time. What I'm giving you is tools until you have the gut feel for how do you go off and take a guess at this. I mean, certainly you have to get a feel for the complexity. So you have to understand how you're going to solve the technology problem. Is this technology you've used before? Is there something new you've never used before? You don't want to assume new technology is going to work right away the first time. You probably are going to need a little bit of time to play, make some changes, clean up some things, realize you built some stuff badly, recode those things. So the more new technologies out there, the more you might want to give yourself a little bit of buffer inside of there. You want to understand that you have good requirements, that you understand those requirements, that you know how to build those requirements ahead of time. And then you want to leverage your process. After you have all those things out there, make sure, have you accommodated for all the phases? Have you done your design? If you're expected to update your design after code, do you have that space inside of there? Have you budgeted that time out there? Because otherwise people will be expecting you to work on the next task. They're not going to be saying, oh, well, you forgot to schedule it, so I guess I'll just add a week to the project. We'll just be late because you forgot to do this up front. That estimation is important because it becomes a real schedule at some point. So how does the work you have translate into that process? How do you set it up? If you do a design review, are you going to do it every time? I mean, one of the big things I always had problems with is I would do my work breakdown structure, and they would build, the project where it would have build A, build B, build C. And that's not the way things work. You build a little bit of A, a little bit of B, a little bit of C, a little bit more A, a little bit more B, a little bit more C. And then you kind of deliver them all together. Well, if you don't schedule it that way, if you kind of have, I'm going to, mow the front half of the yard, then I'm going to mow the back half of the yard, then I'm going to, you might jump back and forth. So you have to let that be clear what's going on in your project, what those dependencies truly are. Are they interdependent? Then you have to know who's going to be part of the project. If I'm doing reviews, what other folks are out there? Even if I have somebody who's only out there for a couple hours, they might need to charge a couple hours, and that could be hundreds of dollars of costs for thousands of dollars of costs if I have a bunch of people. If I have security people I need to bring in, they might be charging my project. If I have architecture people, they might be charging my project, even if they're not doing direct work. So it's really important for good estimation to ensure you have all the pieces from both the technical side as specifically as you can, as well as the process side, your software development lifecycle, to really get a feel for, have I covered everything I need to do? Estimation is something that you always want to give good answers. You want things to be as quick and cheap and easy as you can, but you don't want it to be too quick, too cheap, too easy, because then it's unrealistic towards what you really need to do. So this plays in strongly to our estimation side, because the cost estimates become very much what you're expected to deliver to. And so if you are lazy about your estimation, if you're lazy about telling people the build versus buy decision, then you'll get a bad reputation. You'll get caught in a trap where you said you'd be done by now. Why are you only 75% of the way done? Oh my gosh, this is going to be so much more expensive. Why did we not just buy something or build something or whatever that answer would be? All right, so that's a feel for how this ties in. I'm not expecting you to do super huge levels of details here. We'll see that in our last set of videos here where we look at some of this stuff as a demo. But hopefully this stuff is giving you a good feel for what it is to be a software developer and what it is to work on software projects.